My brother framed me at work and took my promotion so. I built my own business and hired his boss after. He got fired. I'm a 29-year-old guy, and I've spent my whole life being compared to my younger brother. Ethan, he's the kind of person who walks into a room and instantly becomes everyone's favorite. Charming, loud, funny. The kind of guy people mistake for being genuine just because he knows how to make them laugh. I was never like that. I was the quiet one. The one who did everything right but somehow still fell short. Growing up, my parents adored him. Ethan just has that spark. Mom would say whenever he got out of trouble for something, I'd be grounded a week for. Dad called him a natural leader. Me. I was steady, reliable, the responsible one, compliments that felt more like job descriptions than love. I learned early on that in my family, effort didn't matter as much as personality. Still, I kept my head down and worked. Got through college, landed a job at a decent mid-sized tech company. When Ethan graduated, he was struggling to find something stable, and Mom guilt-tripped me into helping. "You're doing well," she said. "Maybe see if your company has an opening." Against my better judgment, I pulled some strings and got him an interview. He aced it, or rather, he charmed it. Within a week, he was working in the same office as me. At first, it felt good, like maybe this time we'd actually be equals. He'd finally see what real work looked like. But almost immediately, people gravitated to him. He cracked jokes in meetings, smoothed over client calls, and somehow made everyone believe he was the golden boy of the department. Meanwhile, I was the guy who stayed late fixing his mistakes. It didn't bother me, not at first. I told myself family was worth the small frustrations. But looking back, I realized that was the beginning of the end, because the day I helped Ethan get that job, I didn't know I'd just handed him the weapon he'd use to destroy my career from the outside. It probably looked like Ethan and I were a great team, the dependable older brother and the charming younger one. But inside the office, it didn't take long for that dynamic to twist into something I couldn't control. Ethan had this way of talking like he knew everything. Even when he didn't, he'd pitch half-baked ideas in meetings with so much confidence that people mistook them for brilliance. And when I'd quietly step in later to fix the flaws, he'd thank me just loud enough for others to think he'd been guiding me. I remember one time after a presentation, our manager Greg patted Ethan on the back and said, "You're lucky to have such a diligent brother doing the grunt work." I forced a smile. But inside, something burned. He was always the face, and I was always the hands. When clients sent appreciation emails, Ethan was the one forwarding them to Greg. When projects succeeded, he somehow became the spokesperson for our team. He never said anything directly cruel. That was his genius. Everything he did was framed as supportive. Like, "Hey man, I told Greg how much you helped." He probably just forgot to mention it. Subtle, slick, always leaving me doubting whether I was being paranoid or just insecure. "See?" Mom beamed one evening on a video call. "I told you two would make a great duo." Ethan always brings out the best in people. She didn't notice how tired I looked or how many nights I'd been sleeping at my desk. Still, I kept telling myself it was temporary, that if I just kept doing good work, people would see. But instead, I started noticing the shift. Greg inviting Ethan to leadership lunches, HR using his face in internal newsletters. I was invisible again, right where I'd started. I told myself to let it go. He was my brother, after all. But deep down, something in me whispered, "You're being replaced." One smile at a time. A few months later, Greg called me into his office and said he wanted Ethan and me to collaborate on a high-value client project. It was one of our company's biggest accounts, the kind that could make or break a career. I'd been handling the client for nearly a year, but now Ethan was being added to help with communication and outreach. Greg called it a compliment. I knew better at first. Ethan acted like a team player. He'd ask for advice, compliment my technical skills, and tell others, my brothers, the real brains behind this. For a while, I believed him. I wanted to, but then things started to slip. Files I'd finalized would suddenly go missing from shared drives. Email drafts I never sent appeared in my sent folder. Reports were getting corrupted, and deadlines started to blur. One Friday, Greg pulled me aside with that polite, disappointed tone managers perfect over time. "Hey, you're usually rock solid," he said, "but lately there've been inconsistencies, missing attachments, version errors. even a few complaints about late responses. My stomach dropped. I'd never missed a deadline in my life. I checked the shared systems obsessively that weekend. That's when I noticed strange timestamps edits on my documents made late at night after I'd logged out. The access trail showed my username. I was sure it was a glitch, until I saw a draft email in the sent folder to a client, written in my tone, signed with my name, but phrased like a child's apology. I confronted Ethan Monday morning, half joking, half terrified. "Hey, are you messing with my files or something?" He laughed like I'd accused him of stealing candy. "Come on, man. Paranoia doesn't look good on you. Maybe you're just overworked. Maybe I was. Or maybe I just started to glimpse how deep his charm could cut when he decided to sharpen it." 2 weeks later, everything exploded. It was a Tuesday morning when Greg summoned me to the conference room. His voice over the intercom was to calm, the kind of calm that only means trouble. When I walked in, HR was already seated. The air felt heavy, like static before a storm. Greg folded his hands and said, "We received a client complaint about data manipulation in your last report." I remember blinking at him, completely lost. Data manipulation? What are you talking about? He slid a printed email across the table. An audit log showing my username had altered several financial entries. Numbers that I knew were correct had been changed to inflated values. My throat went dry. I'd double-checked those files myself. Greg's tone softened, but his eyes didn't. "Look, I know you're stressed. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe you were under pressure. But the client's furious. We have to suspend you pending investigation." Before I could even defend myself, the door opened and in walked Ethan. He looked perfectly concerned, like an actor hitting his mark. "Greg, I just found this," he said, holding a USB drive. It was in the project folder. "I think it might explain what happened." They plugged it in. Screenshots, logs, fake trails, all pointing toward my supposed misconduct. I just stared at him. Ethan avoided my eyes, playing the role of the innocent messenger. HR thanked him for bringing it forward. Greg sighed, turned back to me and said, "We'll need your company badge." That moment didn't feel real. My ears rang. My chest ached. I wanted to scream, to drag Ethan into the hallway and demand the truth, but I just froze. I handed over my badge, feeling like I'd stepped out of my own life. That night, I went home and told my parents what happened. Mom gasped, "Oh, honey?" Ethan said he's been worried about you for months. Maybe you should have asked for help. That was the first time I realized no one was ever going to see through his act but me. 2 weeks after my suspension, I got the official email. Employment terminated due to breach of data integrity policy. No hearing, no appeal. Just like that. 7 years of loyalty erased with a few fake files. I sat in my apartment, staring at that email until the words blurred. It wasn't just losing the job, it was the humiliation. My name had become gossip. Former coworkers stopped replying to messages. HR never returned my calls. Even people I thought were friends avoided eye contact at the coffee shop across the street, and then came the final blow. Greg announced Ethan's promotion. Given his leadership through the recent crisis, the post read, "Ethan will now oversee client relations," the same role I'd trained years to reach. There was even a photo attached, Ethan shaking Greg's hand, smiling like the hero who saved the company. That night, I saw Ethan's Instagram story, champagne glasses clinking, his new car parked in my old company spot. The caption read, "Hard work pays off." It wasn't hard work, it was theft, dressed in confidence. I tried to explain it to my parents again. "He set me up," I said, voice cracking. "I swear he did." Dad sighed like he was tired of the topic. "You've always been too sensitive. Maybe this will teach you resilience." Mom added softly, "Ethan says you've been distant lately. Maybe take a break, clear your head." Clear my head, right? Meanwhile, I was late on rent, drowning in bills, and watching my brother live the life I'd earned. Every door that opened for him had closed on me, and I was the one who'd held them open in the first place. The day I saw him driving that shiny new car, the one I helped him finance 2 years earlier, I felt something in me fracture. It wasn't just anger anymore, it was grief, mixed with something darker, something patient. Because in that moment, I decided if the world was going to believe his lies, I'd build a truth to the next few months blurred into one long gray stretch of nothing. My days had no rhythm, just rejection emails, unpaid bills, and nights spent staring at the ceiling wondering how my own brother had gotten away with it. There's a kind of silence that comes after you lose everything. Not peaceful, but suffocating. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his smirk at that promotion dinner photo. I tried applying for other tech jobs, but the industry is small. Word spreads fast. Recruiters would start interviews friendly, then their tone would shift once they ran a background check. One even asked, "So, what really happened at your last company?" I didn't bother answering. They'd already decided. Ethan hadn't just taken my job, he'd taken my reputation. Rock bottom came one night in my tiny apartment, the lights off because I couldn't pay the bill. My phone buzzed with a notification, an article about Ethan's company landing a major partnership. His face was in the press photo, beaming, holding a plaque that should have had my name on it. That's when I cried for the first time since it all happened. Not out of anger, but exhaustion. Then something unexpected happened. Around 2 a.m., I got a message from an unknown number. It was a former coworker, Jenna, she wrote. "I shouldn't be saying this, but you were right. Ethan messed with your files. I saw him using your login credentials. I didn't say anything because Greg liked him too much. I'm sorry. I read that message over and over until my hands stopped shaking. Proof, not enough for a court, but enough for me." For the first time in months, my anger sharpened into focus. I realized something that night. I'd been trying to get my old life back, when what I really needed was to build something new, something that couldn't be taken from me again. And that's the night I decided Ethan's story with me wasn't over, not by a long shot. That night changed everything. I stopped trying to prove myself to people who had already written me off. Instead, I started working in silence, not for validation, but for vengeance. I had one thing left, the idea Ethan once laughed at. A prototype for a client management software I'd pitched to Greg a year before my firing. He'd dismissed it as too complex for small businesses. Ethan had called it cute. Now, it would be my weapon. I sold what little I had of value, my old gaming setup, a few pieces of furniture, and bought a used laptop and some server time. The nights were long, the coffee cheap, and my apartment freezing. But for the first time in months, I felt alive. I worked 16-hour days, coding until sunrise, building the platform from scratch. I started freelancing small gigs to survive website fixes, system audits, anything that paid. Slowly, I met people, disillusioned developers, marketers tired of office politics, people like me who'd been overlooked. They didn't care about resumes. They cared about drive. I told them my vision, a service that helps small businesses manage clients without losing data, control, or trust. Irony wasn't lost on me. I'd lost all three because of Ethan. They believed in it. One by one, they joined me remotely, unpaid at first, just chasing the dream. The product began to take shape. Every piece of code I wrote felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Some nights, I'd catch my reflection in the laptop screen. Hollow eyes, unshaven face, but a fire that hadn't been there before. I didn't know if this plan would succeed, but I knew one thing for certain. If I ever faced Ethan again, it wouldn't be as the brother he broke. It would be as the man who built something he could never steal. The first 6 months were brutal. I lived on instant noodles and caffeine, coding until my wrists went numb. But slowly, like a sunrise after a long storm, things started to shift. One small client turned into 3, then 5. Word spread fast in online business communities about a system that was cheap, efficient, and designed by a guy who actually cares. I didn't have a company name yet, but the users kept coming. Then, one morning, I woke up to an email from a mid-level firm that wanted a custom build, their current software provider, the same company where Ethan worked. I stared at that email for a full minute, my heart pounding. Part of me wanted to say no, to stay invisible, but another part whispered, "This is how it starts." I accepted. My team and I worked day and night, and within weeks, we delivered a system that outperformed Ethan's company's service, faster, cheaper, cleaner. The client was thrilled. 2 months later, 3 more firms followed. And then the rumors started trickling in. Greg's department, the one Ethan managed, was losing clients. Fast, someone online had called our product the future of business management. Ethan. Companies started scrambling to copy features they didn't understand. I didn't celebrate, not yet. Success wasn't enough, not until justice matched it. But the quiet satisfaction of watching my brother's kingdom crack from a distance, that was intoxicating. I kept expanding, registered the company officially, built a brand, moved into a small shared office space. My developers now paid started calling me boss. It felt strange. Hearing that word and realizing it fit, then one day, I saw an article online, internal shakeups at CoreLink Systems as client losses mount. Ethan's name wasn't mentioned, but I knew. I didn't need confirmation to feel it. The walls were closing in around him. For the first time since losing everything, I smiled. Because I hadn't just rebuilt my life, I'd built the storm that was about to take his down by. By the time my company turned 1 year old, the cracks in Ethan's empire had split wide open. Clients were leaving in droves, frustrated with delays, bugs, and excuses. My product was doing exactly what his company promised, but better. And the irony? They didn't even know it was me behind it. It started with whispers online. Then came the layoffs. I heard through a former coworker that Greg was furious apparently. Ethan had been caught making unauthorized system changes, trying to copy competitor features. He was desperate to impress upper management, to prove he could fix the mess. But in doing so, he exposed how little he actually understood. A month later, I got a LinkedIn notification. Ethan has updated his job status. It said, former client relations manager at CoreLink Systems. No new role listed, just silence. I didn't feel joy. Not immediately, just stillness. Like the world had finally stopped spinning out of control. But that peace didn't last long, because a week later, Greg reached out. His message was short. Hey, I heard about your company. Impressive stuff. Any chance you're hiring? I stared at the screen for a long time, rereading his name. That same Greg who'd suspended me without a second thought. The same man who'd handed my career to Ethan and called it necessary. A part of me wanted to ignore him. Another part colder, sharper saw an opportunity, I replied. Sure, let's set up an interview. When we met in person, Greg didn't recognize me at first. He looked older, worn down by stress and failure. I let him talk about his leadership experience and industry insight, all while fighting to keep a straight face. Then I watched his eyes widen when he finally put it together: my name, my company, my office. And in that stunned silence, I realized the tables had just turned. Completely. Greg froze the moment recognition hit him. His confident pitch died mid-sentence, replaced by a nervous half-smile. Wait, you're that Daniel? He asked, voice cracking just enough to betray his unease. I nodded slowly, leaning back in my chair, savoring the irony. The same man who once told me to hand over my badge was now sitting across from me. Resume in hand, asking for a job. He cleared his throat and tried to recover. Listen, I just want you to know, I always thought you got a raw deal back then. Office politics, you know how it goes. Office politics, that's what he called it. The destruction of my career, my name, my sanity, just politics. I wanted to call him out, to drag the truth out of him. I do know how it goes, I said calmly. It's funny though. The system you called too ambitious is what runs half your old clients now. Greg's eyes darted toward the floor. The room was dead quiet, except for the low hum of the server rack beside us. After a long pause, he said softly, I need this job, Daniel. I'll take anything. Management, consulting, whatever you think I can offer. I looked at him for a long time. There was no satisfaction in seeing him broken, just clarity. I'd spent years believing men like Greg and Ethan were untouchable, but there he was, powerless, sitting in a chair that used to feel like a cage to me. All right, I finally said. You'll start next week, but you'll report directly to my project manager. She handles all oversight now. He nodded, relief flooding his face. He didn't realize what that really meant. He wouldn't be leading. He'd be working for me. As he left the office, I caught our reflection in the glass door, me standing, him walking out. The reversal was almost poetic, and somewhere deep inside, I knew this wasn't the end of the story. Because there was still one more person left who needed to see exactly what I'd become. Weeks turned into months, and the company flourished. Greg worked quietly, efficiently, never daring to step out of line. Every morning when he'd pass my office, I'd see that flicker of shame in his eyes, the memory of how easily he'd once discarded me. And every time he presented a report or deferred to my decision, I felt the balance of the universe tilt a little closer to fair. But it wasn't Greg I thought about most. It was Ethan, my brother, the man who'd taught me that trust could be weaponized. One evening, I was locking up when I got a message from an unknown number. Just one line. "I know you don't owe me anything, but please, can we talk?" I didn't need to ask who it was when I met Ethan a few days later. He looked nothing like the man in those celebration photos. The sharp suit was gone, replaced by wrinkled clothes and hollow eyes. He sat at the cafe table, clutching a cheap coffee cup like it was the last bit of warmth left in his life. "Things fell apart after you left," he said quietly. "Greg turned on me, clients bailed, and I couldn't find work after the firing. Everyone thinks I lied about you." I stayed silent, watching him search my face for mercy. "I messed up, okay?" he said, voice cracking. "But you're my brother. You have to understand, I just wanted to prove myself." "You were always the favorite at work," I laughed, not cruelly, just tiredly. "No, Ethan, I was the one who built things while you took credit. You didn't want to prove yourself. You wanted to be me." He blinked, stunned. Then came the question I'd known was coming. "Can I work with you? Just for a while. I'll do anything." I stared at him for a long time, then said softly, "You once told me I'd never make it without you. Turns out I made it because of you." And I walked away. The day I walked out of that cafe, I felt something I hadn't in years. Peace. Not triumph, not vengeance, just peace. For the first time, I wasn't reacting to Ethan or chasing my parents' approval. I was living on my own terms, and that was worth more than any revenge. A few weeks later, word got around that my company had secured a government contract, the kind of deal that puts you on the map. My inbox overflowed with congratulations from people who once ignored me. Even my parents called. Mom's voice trembled with pride. "We always knew you'd do something great," she said, like the years of doubt had been erased by one headline. I didn't correct her. Some things aren't worth reopening. I invited my entire team to celebrate that night. The office was glowing with laughter, music, and the buzz of everything we'd built together from nothing. Greg was there too, quieter, humbler, but grateful. Watching him toast our success, I realized I didn't need to humiliate anyone. Their regret was enough. When the party ended, I stepped onto the balcony, city lights flickering below. The wind carried the faint sound of traffic and laughter. Life moving on. I thought about the boy who once believed being the responsible one meant letting people walk over him, about the man who lost everything because he trusted too deeply. I wasn't that person anymore. Now, I mentor young developers who've been burned by bad bosses, who've been told they're not leadership material. I tell them the same thing I wish someone had told me. You don't need their approval. Build your own table and make them wish they had a seat. Ethan never reached out again, and that's fine. Some relationships are better left as lessons, because in the end, I didn't just rebuild my life, I reclaimed it. And for the first time ever, being the responsible one finally paid off.